George Washington, 1789 to 1797. The first U.S. president, Washington set many key presidential precedents, including the formation of the cabinet. He led the country through its early years, establishing the principles of democracy. His leadership in the American Revolution cemented his legacy as a founding father. John Adams, 1797 to 1801. A key figure in the American Revolution, Adams was the second president and a strong advocate for independence. He navigated foreign tensions, particularly with France, during his presidency. His signing of the Alien and Sedition Acts remains controversial. Thomas Jefferson, 1801 to 1809, author of the Declaration of Independence, Jefferson doubled the size of the U.S. with the Louisiana Purchase. His presidency promoted agrarianism and individual liberties. He oversaw the Lewis and Clark expedition, which expanded knowledge of the Western territories. James Madison, 1809 to 1817, known as the father of the Constitution, Madison led the U.S. through the War of 1812. His presidency solidified America's sovereignty, but also highlighted weaknesses in military preparedness. He was instrumental in shaping the early national government. James Monroe, 1817 to 1825. Monroe's presidency is marked by the Monroe Doctrine, asserting U.S. influence over the Western Hemisphere. He presided over the era of good feelings, a time of national unity. His administration expanded the U.S. through the acquisition of Florida. John Quincy Adams, 1825 to 1829. The sixth president, Adams focused on modernizing the U.S. economy through internal improvements. His presidency was marked by a lack of political support, leading to a contentious term. He later served as a congressman, advocating for anti-slavery measures. Andrew Jackson, 1829 to 1837. Jackson, a populist, expanded presidential power and fostered the growth of political parties. His policies, including the Indian Removal Act, were highly controversial. He also opposed the Bank of the U.S., strengthening the role of states over federal control. Martin Van Buren, 1837 to 1841. Van Buren served during the Panic of 1837, a severe economic depression. Known for his political skills, he struggled with the economic crisis. His presidency also marked the development of the modern political party system. William Henry Harrison, 1841. Harrison's presidency was the shortest in U.S. history, lasting only 31 days due to his death from illness.
John Tyler, 1841 to 1845. Tyler became president after Harrison's death and faced challenges asserting his legitimacy. He is credited with annexing Texas, which led to the Mexican-American War. His presidency also saw tensions over the expansion of slavery. James K. Polk, 1845 to 1849. Polk is best known for expanding U.S. territory through the Mexican-American War, gaining California and the Southwest. His manifest destiny vision fueled westward expansion. He also oversaw the establishment of the Oregon Territory. Zachary Taylor, 1849 to 1850. Taylor's presidency was cut short by his sudden death after just 16 months. He was a Mexican-American war hero but had no strong political agenda. His brief term was marked by debates over the expansion of slavery into new territories. Millard Fillmore, 1850 to 1853. Fillmore signed the Compromise of 1850, which aimed to ease tensions between free and slave states. His administration focused on internal improvements and economic growth. He struggled with maintaining unity in a divided nation. Franklin Pierce, 1853 to 1857. Pierce's presidency is marked by his support for the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which led to violent conflict over slavery. His efforts to expand U.S. territory were overshadowed by sectional tensions. He is often criticized for not preventing the nation's drift toward civil war. James Buchanan, 1857 to 1861. Buchanan failed to prevent the secession of southern states in the lead-up to the Civil War. His inability to address the slavery issue and his weak leadership during a national crisis hurt his legacy. He supported the Supreme Court's Dred Scott decision, which upheld slavery. Abraham Lincoln, 1861 to 1865. Lincoln preserved the Union during the Civil War and abolished slavery through the Emancipation Proclamation. He delivered the Gettysburg Address, outlining a vision for a reunited nation. His leadership during this critical period defined his legacy. Andrew Johnson, 1865 to 1869. Johnson became president after Lincoln's assassination and faced harsh opposition over his lenient Reconstruction policies. He was impeached by Congress, though he was acquitted. His presidency struggled to heal the divisions left by the Civil War. Ulysses S. Grant, 1869 to 1877. A Civil War hero, Grant's presidency focused on Reconstruction and protecting African American civil rights. His administration faced numerous scandals and corruption issues. However, he also helped solidify the Union's victory in the war. Rutherford B. Hayes, 1877 to 1881. Hayes ended Reconstruction by withdrawing federal troops from the South. His presidency was marked by efforts to reform the civil service system. He was also the winner of the controversial 1876 election, which was resolved through a special commission. James A. Garfield, 1881. Garfield's presidency was tragically cut short by assassination. Before his death, he advocated for civil service reform and supported education and civil rights for African Americans. His death led to significant reforms in the federal employment system. Chester A. Arthur, 1881 to 1885. Arthur oversaw civil service reform, signing the Pendleton Act into law. His administration worked to modernize the U.S. Navy. Initially underestimated, he proved to be an effective president, supporting business regulation and tax reform. Grover Cleveland, 1885 to 1889, 1893 to 1897. Cleveland is the only president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms. He is known for his fight against corruption, his support of the gold standard, and his opposition to high tariffs. His second term was marked by economic turmoil during the Panic of 1893. Benjamin Harrison, 1889 to 1893. Harrison's administration oversaw the expansion of U.S. territories, including the admission of 6 new states. He supported high tariffs and the Sherman Antitrust Act, which aimed to break up monopolies. His presidency struggled with economic issues and party divisions. William McKinley, 1897 to 1901. McKinley led the U.S. during the Spanish-American War, acquiring Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. He supported protective tariffs and the gold standard. His assassination in 1901 led to Theodore Roosevelt's rise to the presidency. Theodore Roosevelt, 1901 to 1909. Roosevelt expanded U.S. influence through progressive reforms, trust-busting, and conservation efforts. His leadership in building the Panama Canal and in foreign affairs reshaped the U.S. role on the global stage. He was a symbol of energy, action, and American strength. William Howard Taft, 1909 to 1913. Taft, a former judge, continued Roosevelt's progressive policies but was more cautious in enforcement. His presidency is marked by the establishment of antitrust lawsuits and the split in the Republican Party. He later served as Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. Woodrow Wilson, 1913 to 1921. Wilson led the U.S. through World War I, advocating for the League of Nations and promoting his 14 points.
Warren G. Harding, 1921 to 1923. Harding's presidency is remembered for scandals like Teapot Dome, though he advocated for a return to normalcy after WWE. He supported pro-business policies and tax cuts. His sudden death led to his successor, Calvin Coolidge, taking office. Calvin Coolidge, 1923-1929. Coolidge promoted economic growth with a hands-off approach to government regulation. He is remembered for his belief in limited government and his quiet, reserved leadership. His presidency coincided with the economic prosperity of the Roaring '20s. Herbert Hoover, 1929 to 1933. Hoover served during the onset of the Great Depression and struggled to address the economic collapse. Despite his efforts, the Depression worsened, leading to widespread discontent. His presidency is often criticized for his inability to mitigate the economic crisis. Franklin D. Roosevelt, 1933-1945. FDR led the U.S. through the Great Depression and World War II. His New Deal programs redefined the role of the federal government in American life. He is the only president to serve 4 terms, profoundly shaping modern American governance. Harry S. Truman, 1945-1953. Truman made critical decisions at the end of World War II, including the use of atomic bombs on Japan. His foreign policy set the stage for the Cold War, including the Marshall Plan and NATO. He also oversaw the beginning of the Korean War, named the Dwight D. Eisenhower, 1953-1961. Eisenhower was a wild blue hero who helped navigate the Cold War, emphasizing containment of communism. His domestic policies focused on infrastructure, including the interstate highway system. He also helped end the Korean War and fostered post-war prosperity. John F. Kennedy, 1961-1963. JFK's presidency was marked by the Cuban Missile Crisis, the space race, and his advocacy for civil rights. His New Frontier aimed to address economic inequality and international tensions. His assassination in 1963 was a turning point in American history. Lyndon B. Johnson, 1963 to 1969. Johnson passed landmark civil rights legislation, including the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and Voting Rights Act of 1965. He also initiated the Great Society, which expanded social programs. His escalation of the Vietnam War tarnished his legacy.
Richard Nixon, 1969 to 1974. Nixon is known for his foreign policy achievements, including détente with the Soviet Union and opening relations with China. His presidency was marred by the Watergate scandal, leading to his resignation. His administration also saw significant domestic policy shifts, including environmental regulations. Gerald Ford, 1974 to 1977. Ford became president after Nixon's resignation and is remembered for pardoning Nixon, which hurt his political standing. He faced economic challenges, including inflation and unemployment. Ford's presidency was marked by efforts to restore public trust in the government. Jimmy Carter, 1977 to 1981. Carter brokered the Camp David Accords, achieving peace between Egypt and Israel. His presidency was plagued by economic issues like stagflation and the Iran hostage crisis. Carter's post-presidential humanitarian work improved his legacy. Ronald Reagan, 1981 to 1989. Reagan reshaped American politics with supply-side economics, military buildup, and a strong anti-communist stance. He played a key role in ending the Cold War, particularly through his relationship with the Soviet Union. Reagan's presidency emphasized individualism and a strong national defense. George H.W. Bush, 1989 to 1993. Bush led the U.S. through the Gulf War, successfully driving Saddam Hussein's forces out of Kuwait. His presidency also saw the end of the Cold War and the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Domestically, he struggled with economic issues, including a recession. Bill Clinton, 1993-2001. Clinton's presidency was marked by economic prosperity and a balanced budget. He signed major welfare reform and the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA. His second term was overshadowed by the Monica Lewinsky scandal and impeachment. George W. Bush, 2001 to 2009. Bush's presidency was defined by the September 11th attacks and the subsequent war on terror. His decision to invade Iraq in 2003 remains a major point of contention. Domestically, his administration faced the 2008 financial crisis. Barack Obama, 2009 to 2017. Obama's presidency included the passage of the Affordable Care Act and the economic recovery from the Great Recession. He emphasized diplomacy, notably with the Iran nuclear deal and the Paris Climate Agreement. His leadership also spurred advancements in civil rights, including the legalization of same-sex marriage.
Joe Biden, 2021-2024. Biden's presidency has focused on managing the COVID-19 pandemic and economic recovery. He has emphasized restoring U.S. alliances and tackling climate change. His administration faced challenges in the withdrawal from Afghanistan and rising political polarization. As of 2024, Donald Trump, 2024 president, elected again, would deliver speeches emphasizing themes of national strength, economic revitalization, and a return to conservative values. His rhetoric would likely focus on reinforcing America's global power and security, particularly regarding foreign policy and immigration. Trump would also emphasize his America First agenda, advocating for lower taxes, deregulation, and a more robust approach to law and order within the U.S.